Hey guys, thanks for joining us. The Tap Cancer Out BJJ Open is heading to 14 cities this year, including Baltimore, Maryland on June 15th and Charlotte, North Carolina on June 22nd. Registration is open for both of those, so please join us. We'll also be heading all over the East Coast and Midwest, so head to tapcancerout.org to see our full schedule. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at tapcancerout and this podcast at Rolling for a Reason podcast. If you want to pick up any of our gear, you can grab gis, rash guards, hoodies, tees, hats, patches, and a whole lot more at store.tapcancerout.org, or you can just head to our website and click the store link in the upper right. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Please leave a rating, review, or comment to let us know what you think. Welcome to the Rolling for a Reason podcast. I am your host, John Thomas, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and middle child, Dave Bannon.
Hello, John.
Hi, Dave. How are you?
Good. That's my favorite fun fact about myself, middle child.
Dave has a new fun fact every time I introduce him. He never knows what's coming. What have you learned as a middle child? Has it been difficult, or is it overrated?
I enjoy being invisible. You know, older, younger sister, to be in the middle, don't have to, just coast through.
What are the age differences between your sisters?
2 years older, 2 years younger. So I'm right in the middle.
But you're the only boy. So
I am. Yeah.
That helps in some respects.
Yeah. I got to play dress up when I was little.
You're the shortest of all three of them, though, aren't you?
It's funny. No. We're just a short family, nice and compact.
Well, the Rolling for a Reason podcast shines a light on the individuals in BJJ, MMA, and beyond that are making the world a better place, and we are excited to be joined in our third episode by our first live guest, Rich McKeegan, one of the most well-known philanthropists in the BJJ community, and we're live on Instagram too. So, Rich, you can wave to our live. I'll peek in and wave right there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, welcome, Rich.
This is awesome. Thank you for having me.
Is this your first live podcast, or you've done? You've done a lot of podcasts.
I've done a few podcasts, but this is going to be my first Instagram live. So
it's our first Instagram live too. So
I'm honored. Absolutely honored. So I'm going to keep my Ricky Bobby hands away from the microphone today.
There you go. This podcast, we want to not only shine a light, as I said, on everybody, or those individuals who are making the world a better place, but we also like to talk about sort of the inner workings or a little behind the scenes on these endeavors, because we hope to motivate more people to start using Jiu-Jitsu and grappling and MMA and martial arts altogether to change the world in the ways that we have tried to. But we always like to start at the beginning and learn about people's origin stories and stuff. So before we get into Blackbelts for Butterflies, which we'll get plenty of information on, sort of when and where and how did you get into martial arts, and what's the origin story of Rich McKeegan?
The origin story. Where do we start?
If we're making a movie and it's the first of a trilogy, we'll say, and we have to get all the backstory done.
Well, I would say the first part of the story would be this horrible person working in a bar, smoking cigarettes, drinking late nights, and finally got tired of all that crap. Went out to Vegas and went to a UFC fight and decided to come back, and his buddy was like, I'm going to start doing UFC. I was like, yeah, good luck with that, buddy. So he actually went out to West Hartford and joined the Hoist Gracie. And about 3 months after me getting my ass kicked on the floors every morning, I sat there and was like, all right, you know what? I kind of dig this. So I decided I'll give it a shot. So I started going there, I quit smoking, I quit drinking at that point, and started doing jiu-jitsu, and I don't know. Let's see. That is now going on 11 years ago. So I stayed with Hoist Gracie, Jim Hughes for about 2 years. And then I changed over to Rob Magow over in Manchester and been training under Rob for 9 years now. And met the best people. Jiu-Jitsu in Connecticut kind of exploded in Connecticut at the same time that I transferred over to Rob. A lot of the same guys that I trained under, kind of everyone separated, went their separate ways. Jim Campbell, Jim Campbell, Brad Wolfson,
Yep.
Jay Bell. They all went their
Gracie
separate
Farmington.
ways. Yeah, Gracie Farmington Valley. Who else? God.
There's a lot. I mean, I started.
Plainville with Greg Wood. He went his separate way. And it's just this awesome area where everyone cross trains together. It's kind of like everyone goes, trains, come home, go train somewhere else, come home. But there's no closed doors. And everyone's just good. Doug Gallant over in Glastonbury. And everyone's just very welcoming. Everyone's just, it's a good vibe in Connecticut now, which I really appreciate.
And it wasn't always like that. And I don't think it's just a Connecticut thing either. I mean, I started training in 2008 and there just wasn't a lot of cross training. You didn't really even think about it. I just, you just go to the same gym all the time and that was that. And then you started to see probably like 4 or 5 years later, sort of the effort as more people were putting out jiu-jitsu content and it was like more accessible to buy people's DVDs and learn other people's moves and stuff. You started to, and also just the sport growing and people moving and having to train at another gym. Like, what if your best friend gets another job somewhere and is, now trained somewhere else? How do you train together anymore? Like, you can't just come over into my living room. So it's like, oh, come to my school. Oh, well, that's kind of weird. But it's definitely changed and it's a completely different landscape now here and elsewhere. And we've seen it as we've visited schools on behalf of Tap Cancer Out. It's just way more welcoming and a lot more, even like specific cross-training classes to get ready for tournaments and things like tournament training with all other schools, because it's so different when you have to fight against someone you've never fought against ever or met or even knew existed on this planet. And you're just so used to the same guys over and over again and the same moves. Everybody knows my lasso sweep's coming. Like, it doesn't surprise anybody, but at least in these types of cross-training environments, you can try out different things or try out your bread and butter against someone who is not used to it. And you just meet so many more people. And I love the direction it's gone over the years.
When I first started training, it was, God, let's see, now it's been 11 years now. So I met one of the great guy in a bar, and he's like, yeah, come train with me. And I went and trained with him, Jerry Navarra. And I went back to my academy and I did a knee slice. Everyone's like, where'd you see that? I'm like, oh, I went and trained this other school. And they're like, you did what? I'm like, yeah, I went and trained in it. No, shh. Don't say that. I'm like, why not? I trained. No, shh. They're like, you can't do that. I'm like, why? It's like, you're not allowed to. I'm like, I'm a paying customer. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can. It's like, no one's going to tell me where I can go train and not train. And it was pretty cool because that was the end of that era. But you're right. Yeah. Now it's like you see, the elite training at other academies because they're getting ready to go compete against, other greats. Was Craig Jones just, he was competing against someone else, and now he's down at Henzo's, learning, getting better at his footlock game because he wants to go train with Gordon Ryan. The game's just getting better all around because of it. So it's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, even guys who do compete against each other, like Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan, like they've competed against each other a handful of times and they train together all the time now. And it seems like they're very welcoming of anybody, even, competitors, rivals, so to speak. Anyone come train, learn. And I like that direction the sport's in, just a big community.
I think there are still some people that are still closed off. And they're like, they've got that little bubble around them. but it definitely shows when they do show up to tournaments. It's like they're not on the podium or they're in that third place consistently. And it's like you see the guys that are cross training, they're taking the top podium places consistently. And it's because they are cross training with the other people, the greats, or they're having these huge camps where they're inviting all these other players to come in and compete and to coach. So it's the sport is just evolving, consistently evolving, which is awesome.
So most people are familiar with black belts for butterflies. It's funny. This is a total random aside, but both Dave and I were on the Fight to Win card that was in Danbury, and after my fight and once Flow Grappling finally put it up, I raced to the computer to watch my fight to listen to what they say, and I was expecting them to be like, "Oh, this is the executive director of Tap Cancer Out. What an amazing organization!" And so I fire up the fight. I'm getting introduced, and they're talking about black belts for butterflies, and I'm like, "Look at this! It's a perfect segue into Tap Cancer Out." So they're black belts for butterflies, great thing, and then I'm just waiting for me to get introduced, and then that recognize who I am. They had no idea who I was. No, they didn't say one word about Tap Cancer Out. They didn't know me. They were questioning whether I was even a brown belt because my belt was so old it looked like a purple belt. It was like
you're even wearing the Tap Cancer Out gi too,
with the Tap Cancer Out rash guard, everything. I pointed to it after I won. No mention, but they talked about black belts or butterflies. So,
but in all fairness, the next day you got the black belt, didn't you?
The next weekend actually. The next weekend I did. Yeah. So, So that was funny. So it's just like, a lot of people do know about this. So, for the few people who don't, sort of tell us a little bit about black belts, how you got started, when you got started, all that stuff.
Well, let's see. Very emotional. Black Belts for Butterflies has been around we're going on our 6th event. Here in Connecticut on May 4th and 5th in the next couple of weeks. It came to fruition on December 14th, 2012. This day, my son's birthday. And unfortunately, it's the same day as the Sandy Hook shooting. Me and my wife had, we'll say, some challenges to having children. And we were very, very fortunate to finally have a child. And that morning we were at Hartford Hospital and we were having my son, Jack. And that same morning as we had Jack, 8:20 in the morning, we started hearing the news of what was going on down in Newtown. So it was... the news reports were very vague. There wasn't a lot of information coming out at the time. But there was also 17 women being discharged from the pregnancy center. So we were in the recovery room for, I think, 3 hours that morning. So we were waiting to go to our room. Finally, it's like, me and Jack went to the nurse's station. My wife and her parents went to the room. And that's when it kind of really started filtering in the information. And we started finding out that there was more casualties that day. We found out that there was, the numbers started climbing. And then it's climbing higher and higher. And then it started to become children. And then it was 6, 8, and then 10. And that's when it became this, and I've talked about before in interviews or people have talked to me. I talked about it, Black Belts for Butterflies. You have this perfect snow globe of emotions that me, my wife, and my son, but you have this whole world outside of it that is just in the most horrible, heinous thing that could have struck the world, where you have 20 children and 6 adults that were slaughtered. It's very hard to feel complete joy, because everything that you've ever prayed for, worked for, asked God for, and then you have this horrible, horrible thing that's layered on top of it. This is it's still six, and all these years later, it's you sit there and it's like, how do you, hard to express and talk about it and deal with it. So I sat there and went through a whole weekend of every doctor that came in our room, every nurse, all my family members. They wore that emotion on their face because everyone was talking about it. Everyone was listening about the names of the children, the ages of the children, the family members, the pictures on the news of what happened in Newtown. And it's hard to be ecstatic and that happy when you know there's another parent out there that has lost their child, and now multiply that times 20. So after that weekend, I just, there are some things in life that you're not going to explain. It's not like, I'm hungry, therefore it's like I need to eat. It's like, it's a feeling. It's like I needed to do something. And a why, a what. It was just, I needed to do something. So I looked at the most supportive people around me, and that was the Jiu-Jitsu community. And they'd always been there through a lot of great things in my life and some downtimes in my life. And one of my friends who could do patches, I knew another friend who was a graphic designer, and we got a patch designed, and he got it made up, and it was, instead of a black ribbon, it was the black belt, and above it said Newtown. Underneath it had the date 12/14/12. And I started a Facebook page, and I started selling them to just friends. I said, let's just $20 a patch. I said, let's just wear them. Yes, we'll donate 100% of the proceeds to the UConn Scholarship Foundation for victims of Sandy Hook. And it's just something. Mm-hmm. Let's do something. I don't know where it's going to go, what it's going to do. It's just, it's doing something rather than sitting on the couch. And that's the best way I could describe it. So I started with the Facebook page. It kind of grew, and a lot of my friends jumped on it, and people in Connecticut jumped on it, and then people around the country started jumping on it. This guy from Oklahoma, Pete Wilhelm, he messaged me, and he's like, hey, I'll come out and do a seminar. Another guy from Texas jumped on that, Robert DeFranco, and he's like, I'll come out too. They came out, did a seminar. The patches kept going out more and more. And then my phone blew up one night, and it was Clark Gracie. He had a patch on his pants while he was fighting Rafa Mendez at Metamoris. And it was just, it just spread. People were catching on. So we donated, I think it was like $8,500, somewhere around there, to the UConn Scholarship Foundation. Through that, I met Ian Hockley, and his son Dylan was killed at Sandy Hook, and Dylan was autistic. But I wanted to do something more, because the media, and this is what drives a lot of the issues that I have with the media, is that things come in and they're kind of a flash in the pan. The media is driven by money. What is going to create viewership? And then as soon as the viewership is done, what's the next big tragedy we can see? Well, that's out. What's the next big thing? And they don't really care about the people anymore. It's like, what's going to drive viewership? Commercials and money. Well, those people are still hurt. Those people are still, the wake of what happened is still there. So I wanted to continue to help those people, to help honor the victims of Sandy Hook. So I talked to Ian. I'm like, hey, you know what? What if we did a huge jiu-jitsu seminar? And it's like we brought in a bunch of different black belts, and we'll do like a 3-day seminar. And I'd worked in the restaurant industry and the hotel industry, the food and beverage industry. I'm like, we could do a big seminar, put that together. And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, I don't know how the hell to do it, but let's see what happens. And I brought it up to my instructor, Rob Mangow. He's like, and I always remember this. He's like, dream big. So I started texting that day, and we had 10 black belts. We had some from Connecticut, some from Washington, Oklahoma, Texas, and we just put it together. No idea what was going to happen. And this is part that I fall apart on this one. So some children with autism, their mannerisms. Some children with autism, they flap their hands. And Dylan was a flapper when they get excited. And Dylan's mom one time, Nicole, asked him, she's like, why do you flap your hands? And she wasn't expecting an answer. His vocal skills weren't developed due to his autism. And he said, it's because I'm a beautiful butterfly. So I was driving home from work one day, and I was like, that's it. Like, black belts for butterflies. And pulled over on the side of the road, and 91 started designing, and sent the logo over to Ian Hockley. And that was kind of like the creation of Black Belts for Butterflies. And did the first seminar, and it was just 10 black belts. Really, really special weekend because it was very selfless. They came in, they taught. They not only taught jiu-jitsu, but life lessons. They taught from the heart. It was about not just them, not about ego, but it was about reaching out to help others. And it was a very, very special weekend. So it came, it went, and then when we were done, it was like, holy, that was amazing. It really was amazing. So it was kind of like, all right, well, when's the next one?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, dude, I can't even think about another one like that. Come on. It's like, that was too much.
That's what everyone asked after our first Tap Cancer Out tournament. It's like, okay, when are you doing another one? Like, I have no idea. I didn't expect. I didn't even know how this was gonna go. I didn't think that there would ever be another one. There's a couple points that you brought up that I wanted to reiterate for our audience. A lot of these cause-based organizations that pop up usually pop up because of something that impacted our lives. I've had a number of family members deal with cancer, pass away from cancer. But when my nephew, before even his first birthday, passed away from leukemia, that's when I got super fed up, with all this, but it still wasn't a few years until I actually did something about it. And the doing something about it is hard, because there's a lot of unknown. You're afraid that whatever your idea is going to fail or won't catch on or isn't the best way to do it. So you sort of sit on it and try to perfect it and try to perfect it and try to perfect it, and then never actually launch anything. So I thought it was interesting that, when you felt that personal motivation to do something, it just started small with patches and hats, and you sort of see where it went. We made a logo, we put it on t-shirts, and we tried to sell it. It didn't work, but we tried. And so we had to figure out a better way to get the community involved. So, I thought it was really interesting that, and I think people can see that, starting small is okay. Starting with a little germ of an idea and throwing it out there is fine. And maybe that doesn't even work. And then it's the second or the third or the fourth iteration that actually catches on, and then it can snowball and build. You don't have to, like with us, if somebody wanted to do what we were doing, launching with 30 tournaments in your first year, you're definitely going to fail. You got to go real slow and build up. And I think that's key. And people look at sort of the end state of a lot of these organizations and be like, how am I ever going to do something like that? It's so big. It requires so many people and so many volunteers and all this organization. I can never do anything like that. Your first thing wasn't even a seminar. It was just a patch. And then it went from there.
Definitely. People sit there and look at the end game, and it's like, it's not. It's definitely the hours of designing, the hours of throwing things away, of will this work? No. Will this work? No. Will this work? The headaches, the sleepless nights, the frustration, and yes, the many failures of, the many no's.
Mm-hmm.
And because a lot of people see that end game of the success, and then they're like, oh wow, that's so great. And it's like, I wish I could do that. And so you can. Blackbelts for Butterflies, it definitely has, 3 things that we want to accomplish at every event. But one of the big things is that I'm no one.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's like, I'm not Tom Brady. I'm good looking, but
the Instagram Live community agrees.
but it's like, I'm not famous. It's like my jiu-jitsu is mediocre at best. A lot will disagree with that, even that. But it's like, I'm not a rock star. I'm not famous. It's like, I'm just someone who decided to do something. And it's like, that's all it was. And I was persistent at it. I just kept at it. And it's like, it just snowballed. And sometimes it's not even me that did it, because I'll never sit there and say, I did it. It's, you come to an event, and I start the event the same way all the time. I say, I'll talk about me for 5-10 minutes, and I hate it. I absolutely hate it. It irks me. I don't really even like doing podcasts or things like this, because I have to talk about me. I hate saying I'm the founder of Blackbelts for Butterflies. Mm-hmm. That bugs me.
Executive director, that's the title you got to take.
It's
a little better. CEO feels weird for a nonprofit. Founder is always weird. So that's why I dig that different title.
It's one of those things where it's like, all right, because it's like, once you come to an event, it's ours, because you take ownership, because you're part of it. You wear a patch, it's yours. You wear a t-shirt, you wear a hat, you're part of Blackbelts for Butterflies. Now you're part of how this event goes. You're going to take this event and take ownership. And if the event is great, why? Because you were part of it. If it sucks, well, that's on you. You were the one that decided to go sulk and sit and have water and not talk to other people and not talk to the black belts. And, it's like, but you can have an amazing event. And that's why I think it takes everyone to make this successful, not just me.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's why the jiu-jitsu community makes things like this successful.
It really is all about the community. Like, what surprised you about the jiu-jitsu community in terms of helping with Black Belts for Butterflies? Like, was it as you expected? What were some surprises with that?
The surprises, let me see. I think I wasn't as surprised with how many people were really willing to jump on board, because the people in this community are so giving. They really are. It's the amount of people that are like, yeah, what do you need? What can I do for you? I was talking to a good friend of mine, Gina Franson, not too long ago, black belt from Minnesota. And we were talking, and I've had this conversation with other people. There's no other martial art or sport where, yeah, I threw the ball with Tom Brady the other day. It's like we can actually reach out and talk to the elite of our sport and then go train with them. So it's like you can't sit there and reach out and say, hey, you know what, can we have Tom Brady come over and practice with us in a month? But we can have, Craig Jones, Leandro Lowe, or, whoever. It's like get them to a seminar. And some of these, like, the amount of amazing black belts that have been a part of Black Belts for Butterflies has been incredible. They've shown support, and they take time away from their students, their academies, their personal life, their wives, their husbands, to come and spend a whole weekend to be a part of this, and they donate 100% of their time. That's special. That's impressive.
It really is. Yeah, the community's really tight knit. It's great. Like you're saying, what my coach likes to use the analogy, you can't go play 1v1 with Michael Jordan, but you can go to take an hour train ride in New York City and roll with Marcelo Garcia.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
incredible. It's incredible. People still, like, non-jiu-jitsu practitioners have a hard time wrapping their head around that. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, how good could that guy be? Like, the greatest in the world, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, they're pretty darn good. And the people, I've had a few people who live in New York City sort of ask for gym recommendations, and I'm like, oh my god, like, which world champion would you like to train with? Or world champions would you like to train with? And they're like, huh? Like, yeah, they're like, you have no idea what you have, like, right under your nose. It's incredible. We spoke a little bit before the podcast, and I wanted to make sure it got on here because it was an interesting conversation about so a lot of nonprofits, cause-based organizations say that they're raising funds in awareness, and the awareness part is always interesting and not necessarily easy to crack for a lot of us. And like cancer for us, everyone is aware, and autism, everyone is aware, but that doesn't mean that every jiu-jitsu instructor, while they may be aware that autism exists, that they know how to handle a child who is on the spectrum if they come in and train at their gym. So do you think Black Belts for Butterflies will or can play a role in helping more schools in this area, in the country, or anything, sort of learn a little bit more about that? Or what does that even mean to a jiu-jitsu instructor?
Absolutely. I think in the future, I would love to start helping other academies in the educational aspect. Autism is so it's so vast. It's like the spectrum is so huge. So, and then you have parents who are just like the spectrum are so vast. Some want to know, some want to let people know, some people don't. Some parents are like, yes, I want my child to have every opportunity. Some parents are very held back. But we want the instructors to be able to sit there and say, hey, you know what? This is how can we sit there and give every instructor an opportunity to be out there to teach every child the same. But on the other hand, how can we sit there and have instructors to be able to sit there and have every opportunity to sit there and look at every child differently? If the instructors at least know what's going on, I think that's the most important part to start. And then have some way of just educating themselves. At Blackbelts Butterflies right now, what we're doing is just when we have guest instructors come in and they talk, they put a face to autism, so that when it's not just something they read in a book or see in a movie, it's like we have parents come in, talk about their children. This is what the day in the life is of autism. This way, when they sit there and see a child having a meltdown in a store, well, that child's not having a meltdown because of, they're not getting a toy or something. They're having a meltdown because of the fact that the lights are too bright. They heard a noise. They're hungry or something, but they can't communicate that. This is a coping mechanism. I would love to sit there and look at a lot of different ways that our website can be a tool used in the community. That way that other academies can go to it and use that tool to help them. I don't think we have that in the Jiu-Jitsu community right now. So there's a lot of work that we have ahead of us. I think in the next year or two that it's like that's something we're going to be looking to, challenges that we have that we're going to be looking to solve.
Yeah, and I think we promote jiu-jitsu as this all-accepting community, male, female, old, young, heavy, skinny, like tall, short, everybody can do it. But then, how accepting is it of, someone who has unique needs, and there's unique physical needs, unique mental needs, and while it's one thing to be incredibly accepting, it's another to sort of know how to handle it. And I don't envy jiu-jitsu instructors, I'm not one, or school owners, that, there are a lot of unique challenges and every student is different, and you have to, I think the more resources out there will be the better for our community to really be truly accepting and to adjust their jiu-jitsu to what they need. And the ways we've seen a lot of there's a lot of blind successful jiu-jitsu competitors, and there's been ways to adjust their game to their strengths and weaknesses, just like we all have strengths and weaknesses. So I know that'll be a super useful resource.
There's some very successful instructors out there, and they've already set the I'm not going to say a blueprint, because there's no blueprint for children with autism. There's no set blueprint because every child is so different. Even just children. I think we can sit there and maybe have an idea of how to run different programs, but just awareness on okay, you know what, this is what we could do, and just make the instructors aware, and then get them into an idea of, okay, you know what, if we can run down certain criteria that we could start working towards and working with, that would be a good start. But just that to start would be a great idea. And then even if they're to build even a community, it's okay, if there's one place where all these instructors could go to, and it's just a headquarters, and they could start, formulating ideas, and then all right, well, where could I go to? It's I have a child that I need help because A, B, and C works, but D doesn't. Okay, well, go to this place and they brainstorm. And it's that would be another good start. So another good idea that we could work towards.
So 6 years ago, did you think you'd be doing this?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. 6 years ago, I thought I'd do one seminar and have no idea after that. I thought I'd maybe still be a crappy purple belt. But it's so proud of where we are, what we're doing. I look forward to seeing what we can still accomplish. I think there's so much more out there that we can accomplish. I think that's what's fun, is that there's so much more out there now, and the opportunities keep kind of, the doors opening up. The doors are getting bigger and bigger, and more people are kind of like, okay, you know what? This hasn't gone away. Maybe I will pay a little bit more attention to this, and maybe I'll listen a little bit more and help a little bit more now. So that's what's really cool about it.
So let's obviously talk about your event that's coming up. I presume it's shaping up to be the biggest one ever, right? It's we always say that, but the ones in your home state, just like ours, are always super well promoted. So May 4th and 5th, gi on May 4th, no gi on May 5th. You fill in the rest.
Well, open up, we have Michelle Wagner. She's the number 13th woman to get her black belt here in the United States. She trains with James Foster in Washington. Super talented woman. Absolutely love her to death. Very funny. Just a great lady. Brad Wolfson here in Connecticut. I call him my pocket black belt.
He'll do anything.
I've never trained with him and walked away, learned something, and then was able to use it the next day on the mat. It's like whatever he teaches, pulled it out of my pocket and then use it the next day. He's amazing. Ton of respect for Brad. After that, we have Sylvia Mundelli, who I'm a huge fan of. It's Luigi. I'm a big fan of Sylvia. I get a kick out of her because as soon as I see her, we just beat the crap out of each other. And she's a great lady, very, very tough. Her jiu-jitsu is really good. And then closing out, my good friend James 300 Foster comes out from Washington. Probably rolls like a Mendez brother, but he's 6'5".
Not the size of a Mendez brother, though.
6'5".
Both of them put together.
Yeah, exactly. If one is standing on the top of the other's shoulders.
A svelte 275 pounds, maybe. And then opening up on no-gi for May 5th is Christian Woodmansey from Pennsylvania. I think he's 125 pounds. He's, I've rolled with him a few times. It's like a ghost. It's like wherever you step, and it's like he's already gone 3 steps ahead of you. Just phenomenal. Then my friend Jim Campbell, who was one of the first people that when I stepped on the mat, I started training with. I owe him 100% of my leg lock issues with. And then Jay Mansfield from New Hampshire just competed out in Pans, took silver. Phenomenal guy. Another big guy, super, super personality, very technical. And then closing out, my really good friend Brian Pangilinan, a few-time world champion. He looks like The Rock, except smushed.
Isn't that what they say about you, Dave?
Pretty much.
Huge heart and just a great guy. So it's just, this lineup of people is just one of the people always ask me. It's like, how you gonna make this year better? And it's like, have another event. And that's all it is. It's just like this lineup is just another great lineup of people. So I'm looking forward to it. I hope everyone comes out. If you buy a ticket, tickets are at... Where's my...
I've got it right here.
tinyurl.com/BB4BF 2019. And if you have a ticket, we're going to have an open mat from 6 to 8 p.m. at Manchester Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from 6 to 8 on Friday, May 3rd. So we're going to have a lot of the black belts there. They're going to be rolling. Plus, I know there's going to be a lot of black belts from around the country as well that are not on the list teaching. They're going to be in town they're going to be there rolling, and a lot of my friends are coming into town as well. My friend Robert DeFranco. Heard there's a new black belt coming into town, George Law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he'll be in town. So give him a shout out. But yeah, so it's but only if you have a ticket can you come in for the open mat. So definitely great event, ton of raffle tickets. I got a ton of gear from a lot of my sponsors that provide gis, soap, rash guards, shoyu roll, Oskier, Tortuga soap. Gosh, I got so much stuff. It's ridiculous.
So head to that website, tinyurl.com/BB4BF 2019, all lowercase. Our last question, which we ask everyone, I usually prepare them, but I didn't prepare you. So we'll see how well you do off the cuff. I think it's sort of easy, but it's very important to, I think, anybody who wants to do something, wants to make a difference, or just anybody in business in general. But what's the one thing you wish you knew about doing all this before you started it? Like, what's the one thing you would tell Rich from 6 years ago? Like, before you start black belts, make sure you know this.
Don't stress about people buying tickets, because jiu-jitsu people wait till the last minute to do anything.
I can 100% co-sign for that, having hosted 30 tournaments, so that's very true. That's one of the most actionable answers, I think, in very specific answers, but very
God.
true. Yes,
they wait,
it's
true. Like the night before, I guess I'll buy a ticket.
Yeah.
It's like, no, go buy your tickets now. Please.
Yep.
Don't wait till the last minute.
We have the data for all of it now. Like 30% of the funds raised come in the last week. 10% of all the funds raised for each event is the last day. So obviously the last day is the most important one. And the same with registration. We'll get, like 30% of registrants in like the last 3 days.
Oh, it's a heart attack. It absolutely drives me nuts. The first few years, it would absolutely kill me. I'm like, why are people not registering? Mm-hmm. And then the last like 4 days, it's like 50% of the people register.
Right.
I'm just like, you guys kill me.
Can they buy tickets all the way up until like the Thursday before, or is there a cutoff?
No, the cutoff is coming soon.
Whenever you're listening to this, if it's before May 4th, the cutoff is right now, today, so you better go get your tickets. Rich, thank you so much for being on here, for not only being on the podcast, but for coming down to beautiful Milford, Connecticut, and being our first in-person guest, our first Instagram live podcast guest, and all that jazz. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate everything you're doing with Black Belts for Butterflies. Thank you for starting this. Thank you for doing this, and for being an example for so many others in the jiu-jitsu community.
Guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
All right.
At Manchester.
Absolutely.